Mr. Barron sat alone in his office. His laptop screen glowed, casting a faint light over his face. He hit send on an email. "We've locked in $18 million in price increases over the last 6 months, but we're not done." He glanced at the large screen in front of him, displaying rows of data from Agri Stats. The spreadsheet compared his company's prices to the Agri Stats benchmarks. For weeks, they had been tracking the gaps. Chicken wings priced 14 cents per kilo lower than their competitors, thighs lagging by 20 cents. He had given his sales team clear instructions: close those gaps. Push wings to $5.20 per kilo. His team had been relentless. Contract renegotiations were underway with major customers. Across the table from them, supermarket representatives sat nervous and uncomfortable as they reviewed the new pricing proposals. One by one, they nodded. They had little choice. The new contracts would bring in an additional $1.2 million, all from correcting what Agri Stats had identified as underpriced products. Every week, the data was reviewed and adjusted. Sanderson Farms, Tyson, Cargill, they were all playing the same game. The Agri Stats reports laid it all out. Which cuts of meat were priced below the national average? Which products could bear a price increase without losing sales? Emails poured into Mr. Barron's inbox, each one carrying a spreadsheet more promising than the last. Chicken wings, once marked in red as underpriced, were now in green, their prices in line with Agri Stats' top quartile averages. Breasts, fillets, retail packs, every product now ranked higher in the pricing game. The system was working. The strategy was simple: raise prices across the board. As long as everyone played their part, profits would continue to rise. And they did. In boardrooms across the industry, executives were celebrating $18 million in 6 months, with more to come. The numbers flashed on the screen, and the room filled with the sound of clinking glasses and satisfied laughter. This was no accident, no fluke of supply chains or inflation. They had turned pricing into a game they controlled, ensuring that consumers paid more with every trip to the grocery store. Welcome to the new reality, where data is dealt like pure cocaine, and your grocery bill isn't a result of market forces, but the handiwork of a cartel pulling the strings from the shadows, keeping prices sky high to line their pockets with every cent. Meet Agri Stats, a company whose name has become synonymous with one of the most far-reaching corporate scandals of the 21st century. Founded in 1985 by Indiana poultry consultant Jim Cox, Agri Stats started with a seemingly simple goal: to provide data that would help meat processors streamline operations. By sharing insights on production costs and efficiency, the industry would supposedly become more transparent. It sounded like a win for everyone at first, but things took a darker turn. In 2013, pharmaceutical giant Eli Lilly bought the company, only to sell it off 5 years later under the weight of mounting antitrust lawsuits. Now, Agri Stats is privately owned by a group of executives, backed by the Swiss venture capital firm Thyssen-Bornemisza Group AG. These executives, along with foreign nationals, stand accused of turning Agri Stats into a tool for corporate manipulation. The company's mission statement once promised transparency, but the key word now is profitability. As the lawsuits show, it's not consumers who are seeing those profits, just a handful of corporations that have turned an industry meant to feed people into a system designed to drain their wallets. Imagine you're shopping in a local market where there are several stores selling the same product, let's say apples. Normally, each store competes with the others by offering the best price or freshest fruit, which benefits you, the customer, because you can choose the best deal. Now, imagine instead of competing, these stores secretly agree to sell apples at the same high price. No matter where you shop, you're stuck paying more, and they all make more profit because they've eliminated competition. This is a cartel, when businesses that should be competing work together to fix prices and control the market, making it impossible for you to find a better deal. In the case of Agri Stats, Something similar is happening on a much larger scale. Meat processors, using detailed data provided by Agri Stats, are essentially forming a cartel by coordinating prices instead of competing. On the surface, it looks harmless enough. A data company providing valuable data to meat processors. They run a give-to-get scheme, where processors hand over detailed data from their facilities and, in return, get access to everyone else's numbers. We're talking about everything. Livestock births, slaughter rates, production costs, even wages. These aren't rough estimates either. It's precise, hard data, collected and compiled into massive reports that break down profits and production on a per-animal, per-pound basis. Sounds straightforward, right? But here's the problem is that it's being weaponized to fix prices and strangle competition, all while consumers end up paying more for less. In 2023, the Department of Justice came knocking, accusing Agri Stats of running an illegal info-sharing operation. The companies playing this game control 90% of the U.S. broiler chicken market, 80% of pork, and 90% of turkey. Agri Stats says the data is anonymous, but that's a convenient lie. Processors can easily figure out who's who, cross-referencing reports to know exactly what their competitors are up to. With this insider info, they don't need to guess anymore. They can manipulate prices and production, knowing full well how the market will react. Instead of battling for the best price, they're moving in lockstep, thanks to Agri Stats' cheat sheet. Take Tyson Foods as an example. In 2010, according to court documents, Tyson allegedly instructed its sales team to use Agri Stats data to negotiate higher prices with retailers. The memo was simple as this: jack up your prices, and don't sweat losing customers because everyone's in on the same racket. In another case, a Smithfield executive was even more blunt, summarizing Agri Stats' advice in 4 words: just raise your price. And then there's Cargill. They realized they were charging less than the national average for turkey. But instead of using that to their advantage, Cargill hiked their prices to match the industry standard. Why compete when you can just coast along with everyone else? By 2016, Cargill's prices were above average, and the whole industry was raking in profits. And while some companies faced consequences, others like Sanderson have momentarily slipped through the cracks. Sanderson Farms, one of the largest poultry producers in the U.S. Initially accused of using Agri Stats data to coordinate pricing with competitors, Sanderson was cleared in court due to lack of evidence. However, with the Agri Stats lawsuit now in full swing, Sanderson may once again come under fire. The revived scrutiny could reopen questions about its role in the alleged price-fixing scheme, with potentially serious implications for the company. In September 2023, the Department of Justice, alongside 6 states, filed a significant antitrust lawsuit against Agri Stats in the U.S. District Court for the District of Minnesota, accusing the company of violating Section 1 of the Sherman Antitrust Act. The charges stem from Agri Stats allegedly facilitating the exchange of competitively sensitive information among meat processors, allowing them to coordinate pricing strategies. Minnesota was chosen for the case given its jurisdiction over major processors like Cargill and Hormel. In November, California Attorney General Rob Bonta accused Agri Stats of driving up the cost of essential food items like chicken, pork, and turkey, affecting the lives of American families nationwide. North Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, and Utah quickly followed suit, backing the DOJ's lawsuit as the scope of Agri Stats manipulation became impossible to ignore. Agri Stats has maintained its innocence, claiming that it merely provides anonymized benchmarking data to help processors make informed decisions. The company points to a 2012 DOJ investigation that, they argue, cleared them of any misconduct. Agri Stats insists its service improves industry efficiency by offering insight into production costs and operational performance. However, the evidence gathered tells a different story. One such piece of evidence shows Agri Stats going beyond just providing data. In one instance, the company persuaded a processor to remain subscribed by showing how a small price hike on bacon could generate an additional $100,000 in revenue. Further revelations came from internal emails uncovered during the investigation, shows Agri Stats' direct involvement in shaping the actions of meat processors. In a 2016 email, an Agri Stats consultant advised Cargill to raise the price of ground turkey after noticing it was priced 20 cents lower than a competitor at Walmart. The consultant even suggested Cargill could comfortably charge 11 cents more than another competitor without risking a loss in sales. This evidence highlights how Agri Stats not only provided data, but also encouraged processors to use that data to raise prices, contradicting their claims of neutrality. In May 2024, Agri Stats' efforts to dismiss the DOJ's antitrust case were blocked by a Minnesota district judge. The court ruled that there was sufficient evidence to proceed with the case, citing the need for further investigation into Agri Stats' role in enabling price fixing across the meat industry. Agri Stats sought to move the case to Indiana or Illinois, likely seeking to benefit from the precedent set in a 2023 Illinois case where Sanderson Farms escaped similar charges. However, the judge denied the request, keeping the case in Minnesota, where both state and federal scrutiny of Agri Stats practices continues to grow. In response, Agri Stats has maintained its defense, repeating that it only provides anonymized data for efficiency improvements. But as the DOJ investigation deepens, more evidence is surfacing to challenge this narrative. What's happening with Agri Stats is just a small part of a much larger and more insidious problem. The manipulation of data and prices in industries like meat processing is causing damage far beyond the checkout line. It's not just about paying more for a pound of chicken. It's about the collapse of competition, the suffocation of small businesses, and the widening gap in the food supply chain. When powerful corporations can collude without consequence, they push smaller players out of the market, leaving consumers with fewer choices and steadily rising prices. The ripple effects extend beyond just the cost of meat. Farmers and ranchers, already squeezed by razor-thin margins, are pushed even further to the edge when processors control supply and demand with such precision. These small to medium-sized farms and ranches are then getting gobbled up by big agro-corps. And as prices rise for consumers, it becomes increasingly difficult for low-income families to afford basic necessities. It's a vicious cycle, and companies like Agri Stats are right at the center of it. Beyond the immediate harm to consumers and the free market, the Agri Stats scandal shows a glimpse into a dystopian future of the world, where data is weaponized against the people. As industries gain access to increasingly detailed information, we risk entering an era where corporations use data not to innovate or serve the public, but to systematically exploit it. Imagine a world where every aspect of the economy, from groceries to healthcare, is dictated by the algorithms of a few powerful companies. If left unchecked, the Agri Stats model could pave the way for a corporate-dominated, totalitarian society where competition and fairness no longer exist. For nearly 40 years, Agri Stats has operated in the shadows, helping meat processors inflate prices and boost their profits, while the everyday shopper pay more for less. Now, with the DOJ lawsuit shining a light on these shady practices, it's clear that the American free market is far from free. It's rigged, and this is just the start. If the allegations hold up in court, it could be a critical turning point for antitrust enforcement in the U.S., a system that hasn't been truly modernized in decades. The Sherman Antitrust Act, passed back in 1890 to combat the industrial age robber barons, wasn't built to handle the digital age of global corporations and data-driven monopolies. While those laws have stood still, corporate power has morphed into something far more complex and far more dangerous. The legal tools to hold these corporations accountable have become blunt and ineffective, allowing companies like Agri Stats to thrive in the shadows. For years, big corporations have found ways to escape accountability, using their size and influence to crush competition and fix prices. What Agri Stats has been doing isn't an isolated incident. It's a blueprint for how other industries could exploit these same loopholes to control prices and rake in profits at your expense. This lawsuit has the potential to change that, to finally rein in these monopolistic practices. But if the courts fail to act, it is going to be the signal fire for corporations everywhere that the system is theirs to manipulate, while consumers, farmers, and small businesses are left behind. In the meantime, the next time you pick up that pack of chicken wings or pork chops, remember, the price you're paying may not just be the result of market forces. It could be part of a coordinated effort to squeeze every possible money out of your pocket. And while this is unfolding in the US, don't assume we are safe. Big agro corporations with no concern for your wallet or well-being are always looking for new markets to exploit. If we don't stay vigilant, these same schemes could be playing out in your own backyard. Isn't it ironic that the elites practice their own brand of juicy socialism, sharing profits and protecting each other, while the rest of us are left with raw capitalism?